Admiral Vex-Nine stared at the tactical display with what humans might call smugness, if they knew what smugness looked like on a Korathian face. 6 tentacles, purple skin that shifted color with emotion, and eyes the size of dinner plates. Right now, those eyes gleamed with anticipation. So, he gurgled to his subordinate, Commander Yilk-7, "These humans think they can challenge the Korathian Empire?" His voice carried that particular tone reserved for discussing particularly amusing insects. Their entire military consists of metal tubes that throw tiny projectiles. How quaint. Yilk-7's own tentacles writhed nervously. Something about the intelligence reports bothered him, though he couldn't place what. "Admiral, perhaps we should review their defensive capabilities more thoroughly. The reports mentioned something called nuclear weapons and nuclear weapons." Vex-Nine's laugh sounded like a garbage disposal having an argument with a blender. "Commander, we've been splitting atoms for entertainment since before their species learned to walk upright. They discovered fire yesterday, and now they think they're warriors?" The massive Korathian dreadnought Eternal Dominance hung in space like a metallic moon, bristling with energy cannons that could crack planets. Around it, a fleet of 300 warships waited in perfect formation. Each vessel could level continents. The humans had, what? Some primitive rockets and delusions of adequacy? "Begin the approach to their third planet," Vex-Nine commanded, settling into his command chair with satisfaction. "Open a communication channel. Let's give them a chance to surrender before we demonstrate why challenging the Empire was their species' final mistake." The view screen flickered to life, showing what appeared to be a human military facility. A woman with short brown hair and sharp eyes appeared on screen. She wore a uniform covered in colorful rectangles that Vex-Nine assumed were primitive status indicators. "This is General Lisa Park of Earth Defense Command," the human said, her voice steady. Too steady, actually. Vex-Nine had expected cowering, maybe some pleading. Instead, she looked bored. "You've entered our solar system without permission. State your intentions." Vex-Nine's skin flushed deeper purple with amusement. "Human, I am Admiral Vex-Nine of the Korathian Empire. Your planet has been selected for integration into our territory. You have exactly one of your rotational periods to surrender unconditionally, or we will demonstrate why resistance is futile." General Park tilted her head slightly. "Integration? That's a fancy word for conquest. Here's a counteroffer." She paused, and Vex-Nine could swear he detected the hint of a smile. "Leave. Now. While you still can." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Several junior officers made choking sounds that might have been laughter or horror. Did she just threaten us?" Yilk-7 whispered. "I believe she did," Vex-Nine replied, his voice climbing an octave with disbelief. "Commander, show her our fleet composition. Perhaps a visual aid will help her understand basic mathematics." The display shifted to show the massive Korathian armada from an external view. 300 ships, each one a technological marvel that had conquered dozens of worlds. The smallest frigate could reduce a human city to ash in minutes. General Park studied the display for exactly 3 seconds. "Impressive. Is that all?" Vex-Nine's tentacles began twitching uncontrollably. In 2 centuries of military service, no species had ever responded to the sight of the Imperial fleet with, whatever this was. Indifference? Amusement? "Human, you clearly don't comprehend the situation. Each of those vessels carries enough firepower to sterilize your continents. Our technology is thousands of years more advanced than yours. Your weapons cannot even penetrate our shields." "Weapons?" Park raised an eyebrow. "Who said anything about weapons?" Before Vex-Nine could process that statement, alarms began blaring across the bridge. Yilk-7 was studying his instruments with growing panic. "Admiral. We're detecting massive energy signatures throughout their system. Hundreds of them. No. Thousands. From where? Vex-Nine demanded, spinning toward the tactical display. Everywhere, sir. The asteroid belt, their outer planets' moons, even their space debris. It's like everything is powering up at once. General Park's image remained calm on the view screen. You know, Admiral, you made an interesting assumption. You assumed we'd try to fight you with weapons. The tactical display lit up like a festival celebration as energy signatures bloomed throughout the solar system. Not weapon signatures. Something else entirely. What are those readings? Vex-Nine's voice had lost its smugness entirely. Engines, Park replied casually. Really big engines. Yilk 7's voice cracked. Sir, the asteroid belt is moving. That couldn't be right. Vex-Nine stared at the display as thousands of rocks, from pebbles to mountain-sized chunks, began accelerating toward their position. But not randomly. With purpose. With coordination. Impossible. You cannot move asteroids with your primitive technology. Primitive? Park laughed, and the sound sent chills down Vex-Nine's spine. Analog. Admiral, we've been planning for this conversation for 70 years. Ever since we detected your scout ships in the outer system. Did you really think we spent that time building bigger guns? More alarms screamed. The moons of the gas giants were accelerating out of orbit. Thousands of pieces of space junk, from old satellites to discarded rocket stages, suddenly blazed with engine signatures. You're using your entire system as a weapon. Yilk 7 gasped. Weapon? No, Park corrected, wagging her finger. We're using physics. See, your ships are incredibly advanced. Beautiful shields, amazing armor. But Newton's laws work the same everywhere in the universe. Vex-Nine's blood ran cold as understanding dawned. You're going to ram us. With asteroids. Not just asteroids. Moons. Comets. We've got a lovely chunk of ice about the size of Manhattan heading your way at significant fractions of light speed. Very pretty trail. The first impacts came from the smaller debris. Pebbles and metal fragments, accelerated to incredible velocities, began pepper-spraying the Korathian fleet. Individual pieces harmless against their shields, but there were millions of them, and behind the small stuff, the real ammunition approached. A asteroid the size of a city block, wrapped in fusion engines and moving fast enough to make relativistic effects noticeable, was bearing down on the flagship. Admiral, Yilk 7's voice was barely a whisper. Evasive maneuvers? Against half the solar system? Vex-Nine stared at the tactical display in something approaching admiration. How do you evade a planet's worth of projectiles? General Park's voice cut through the chaos. The offer to leave still stands, Admiral. Though I should mention, we've calculated the orbital mechanics very precisely. You've got about 7 minutes before the really big rocks arrive. Vex-Nine looked at his tactical officer. Can we destroy the incoming asteroids? Sir, there are thousands of them. Different sizes, different velocities, coming from multiple vectors. Even if we used every weapon at maximum power, we couldn't stop more than a fraction. And if we try to flee? The smaller objects will reach us before we can achieve jump distance. At these velocities, even a grain of sand could penetrate our hull. Park continued her cheerful commentary. Oh, and Admiral? Those aren't random asteroids. We've been hollowing them out and filling them with very dense materials. Depleted uranium, mostly. Amazing what you can accomplish with 70 years of preparation and a complete willingness to rearrange your solar system. A moon-sized object appeared on the long-range sensors, moving at speeds that made Vex-Nine's mathematic circuits overheat. This is insane, he muttered. Who weaponizes their entire star system? Humans, Park replied simply. We don't like uninvited guests. The first major impact struck a frigate on the fleet's outer edge. The ship simply ceased. One moment it was there, the next it was an expanding cloud of superheated plasma. 6 minutes 30 seconds, Park announced helpfully. Vex-Nine realized he was facing a species that had spent 7 decades turning their home system into the galaxy's largest shotgun. And they'd just pulled the trigger. All ships, he croaked into the communications array, emergency jump preparation. We're leaving. Leaving? Park sounded almost disappointed. But Admiral, you haven't seen our best trick yet. What trick? Well, she said, and now Vex-Nine could definitely hear the smile in her voice, we also moved the sun. Admiral Vex-Nine stared at General Park's image with the kind of expression usually reserved for discovering your breakfast is trying to eat you back. You moved the sun, he repeated slowly, as if saying it again might make it less completely insane. Just a little, Park replied with the casual tone of someone discussing weekend gardening plans. 0.003% increase in luminosity, slight positional adjustment. Took us 40 years and about half our global energy production, but the results are quite spectacular. Yilk-7 was frantically checking his instruments, his tentacles moving so fast they were practically a blur. Admiral, she's not lying. Solar output has increased. The star's position has shifted by approximately 2 million kilometers. You can't just move a star. Vex-Nine sputtered. The gravitational effects alone would destroy everything in the system? Oh, absolutely, Park interrupted cheerfully. That's why we spent 30 years moving all our important stuff first. Colonies, industrial platforms, even some of the prettier asteroids. We're quite attached to our solar system, Admiral. We just rearranged it a bit. The tactical display was becoming increasingly terrifying to watch. Waves of projectiles continued converging on the Korathian fleet from every direction. Some were small and fast, others were large and apocalyptic. All of them were very, very angry. Sir, Yilk-7's voice cracked, jump drive charging at 60%. We need 4 more minutes. 4 minutes we don't have, Vex-Nine muttered, watching a cluster of asteroids the size of skyscrapers bearing down on them. Human, surely we can negotiate. The Empire is reasonable. Perhaps we could discuss territorial boundaries, trade agreements. Oh, we're way past negotiations, Park said, consulting what appeared to be a checklist. You declared our planet selected for integration, remember? That was diplomatically equivalent to declaring war. And Admiral? We take war very seriously. Another frigate vanished in a flash of light as a particularly large chunk of engineered death found its mark. The shields were holding on the larger ships, but barely. This is madness. Vex-Nine shouted. What civilized species destroys their own star system to fight an enemy? Civilized? Park raised both eyebrows. Admiral, you came here to conquer our planet, enslave our population, and steal our resources. We responded by turning physics into a weapon. Which one of us sounds civilized to you? A proximity alarm screamed as something the size of a small mountain approached the flagship. Vex-Nine could see it on the main viewer now, a jagged chunk of rock and metal wrapped in fusion engines and moving fast enough to punch through a planet. Evasive maneuvers, he commanded. The massive dreadnought began turning, its engine straining against momentum and physics. The asteroid missed by less than a kilometer, close enough that the gravitational interaction rattled every bolt in the ship. That was a warning shot, Park mentioned casually. A warning shot? That thing could have destroyed us. Admiral, if we wanted to destroy you, you'd already be destroyed. We've had targeting solutions on every ship in your fleet since you entered the system. This, she gestured vaguely, is just us being polite. Yilk-7 looked up from his station, eyes wide with terror. Sir, I'm detecting something else. Multiple objects approaching from the direction of their outer planets. Very large objects. The long-range sensors painted a picture that made Vex-Nine's circulatory system attempt to reverse direction. 3 massive shapes were accelerating toward them from the edge of the system. Not asteroids. Not comets, planets. You moved planets, he whispered. Well, technically they're dwarf planets, Park corrected. Pluto, Ceres, and a few others. We've been accelerating them for about 15 years. They're not moving terribly fast by interstellar standards, but they don't really need to be. Mass is mass. Jump drive at 80%, Yolk-7 reported, his voice barely audible over the sound of more ships dying around them. Vex-Nine watched his carefully planned invasion fleet being systematically destroyed by what amounted to a solar system having a very bad day. Human, your species is completely insane. Thank you, Park replied sincerely. We've worked very hard to cultivate that reputation. But why? Why go to such extremes? Surely there was a diplomatic solution. Park's expression hardened slightly. Admiral, your empire has conquered 47 star systems. We've studied the records. You don't negotiate. You don't compromise. You show up, make demands, and when species resist, you glass their worlds and enslave the survivors. She leaned forward slightly. Did you know that the Zentaurians sent you a formal surrender after you destroyed their first 3 colonies? Complete capitulation, offered to serve the Empire willingly. You killed them anyway. Called it efficiency. Vex-Nine's skin shifted to a darker purple. That had been standard operating procedure. Leave no potential rebels alive. So when we detected your scout ship 70 years ago, Park continued, we had a choice. Build bigger weapons, or think differently. We chose to think differently. By weaponizing stellar mechanics. By giving you exactly what you wanted, Park corrected. You wanted a fight, Admiral. Earth is sending you the kind you'll regret asking for. The jump drive reached 90% charge as another wave of impacts shredded the outer ships. The Eternal Dominance shuddered as smaller debris peppered its shields. Sir, Yolk-7 called out, we have a problem. The jump calculations are off. The gravitational changes they've made to the system are affecting our navigation computers. What does that mean? It means we might jump into the middle of a star, or into interstellar space with no navigation reference. The stellar cartography is completely wrong now. Park's voice cut through their panic. Oh, did we forget to mention that? Yes, moving celestial bodies does terrible things to navigation. We've got updated star charts, if you're interested. You're holding us hostage with mathematics, Vex-Nine realized. Exactly. See, you're not as slow as your invasion plan suggested. The jump drive hit 95%. One of the approaching dwarf planets was now visible to the naked eye, a dark sphere wreathed in engine fire. Admiral, Yolk-7's voice carried desperate hope, we could try a blind jump. Random coordinates. And end up floating in empty space for centuries? Or materialized inside a black hole? Better than being crushed by a weaponized planet. Vex-Nine looked at the tactical display one more time. Of his 300 ships, fewer than 50 remained functional. The rest were expanding clouds of superheated metal and regret. General Park, he said formally, we, the Korathian Empire wishes to discuss terms. Terms? Park appeared to consider this. Interesting. What did you have in mind? Complete withdrawal from your system. A formal treaty recognizing human territorial sovereignty. Perhaps even a mutual defense pact. Counteroffer. Park's smile was sharp enough to cut steel. You leave. You never come back. You update your star charts to mark this system as occupied by dangerously insane humans who weaponize physics. And you spread the word to every other species in the galaxy that Earth is not interested in visitors who arrive in warships. That's acceptable. Oh, and Admiral? One more thing. Yes? Next time you want to conquer a planet, maybe send a fruit basket first. See how they respond to gifts before you try invasion. Some species, like us, have very creative ideas about hospitality. The jump drive finally reached full charge. Vex-Nine looked around his bridge, at the terrified faces of his crew, at the tactical display showing incoming planetary bombardment, at the image of a human who had just taught the Korathian Empire a lesson in applied physics. All ships, emergency jump. Random vectors. Anywhere but here. Safe travels, Admiral, Park called out cheerfully. And remember, Earth always returns calls. The last thing Vex-Nine saw before the jump drive engaged was General Park raising a small cup in what humans apparently called a toast. The Korathian fleet vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind only empty space and the slowly cooling debris of their hubris. Back on Earth, General Park turned to her aide. Well, that was fun. How long before the cleanup crews can get the solar system back to normal? About 30 years, ma'am. Maybe 40. Excellent. That should give us enough time to prepare for their friends. She looked out at the stars, where somewhere, a very confused Korathian admiral was trying to explain to his superiors why you should never pick a fight with a species crazy enough to move their own sun. After all, Earth had always been good at making friends, they just had a very unique way of introducing themselves.